Good day, everyone. My name is Tim Murphy. I'm a board member of the Idaho Environmental Forum. IEF is an informal, nonprofit, nonpartisan, and educational association that promotes cordial and productive conversations on environmental issues affecting Idaho. Today, we'll be visiting with and hearing from three women who live in Idaho and play key roles across the wildland community. First, I want to introduce Jessica Gardetto, BLM Public Affairs Chief at NIFC, the National Interagency Fire Center at Boise. Jessica will be our host for today's virtual forum. I first met Jessica when she worked as an engine captain for the BLM Boise District. From Jessica's rookie year to her present leadership position at the National Interagency Fire Center, Jessica has held many key positions across the wildland fire business. Jessica, at this point, I'll hand off to you. Thanks.
Good day, everyone. I'll provide a quick panelist introduction and then an overview of their vast wildland fire management experience, and then we'll go to our panelists. So first, Beth Lund is the Assistant Director for the U.S. Forest Service's Office of Fire and Aviation Management, making her the top Forest Service official stationed at the National Interagency Fire Center here in Boise, Idaho. Beth is retiring soon, which is a very big loss for the fire community. And for many years, she has served as a Type 1 incident commander, managing large wildfires throughout the country. Beth also responded to Australia wildfires in early 2020 during their most severe fire year in history. Tanya Brummett is the Boise National Forest Supervisor, a position she started in February of 2020. She served as the Boise National Forest Deputy Forest Supervisor prior to her current position. Tanya has 19 years of federal service and has held numerous U.S. Forest Service positions, including the Payette National Forest, the Tongass National Forest, the Lolo National Forest, and the Gila National Forest. Allison Lund is a firefighter and assistant contract equipment specialist at the Boise National Forest Garden Valley Center. Allison began her career as a Type 2 wildland firefighter, but Allison was also a Boise Interagency hotshot crew member for 14 years. And for those of you who may not be familiar with wildland fire management, hotshots are some of the most elite wildland fire crews in the country. They take the most challenging assignments and are, as many of us say in the wildland fire community, hardcore. As you may suspect, Allison is the legendary Beth Lund's daughter, so she must have been born with fire in her blood. Beth, Tanya, and Allison, we have two areas for you to reflect on and explore with us today. I'll pose both of them and then ask each of you in turn to respond. I'll turn to Beth first, followed by Tanya, and then Allison. So, thinking back over your career, what comes to mind regarding your initial seasons as a firefighter in the wildland fire workplace, both on and off wildland fire incidents? And then how would you characterize changes over time up to today's wildland fire workplace? Beth?
In 1976, as you stated, I was in Northern California, and recruited out of a community college. What I remember, that was, I think 76 and 77 was when the fire community began to wear Nomex. So that was one of the things that was just being instituted back then. So when I first went to work, we had blue jeans on and khaki shirts, and so that was certainly a difference, and of course we certainly didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So as far as the workplace goes, when you were out in the field, you used radios, which we still do, of course, but that has been a significant change in the last decade or so, and I struggle to think of anything else real poignant. I was hired on as a GS3 on an engine crew, and I did not have any real issues or anything. That was also the year where they were trying to recruit more diversity, and in that time frame there in California, it was relative to the consent decree. So certainly there was 4 of us females that started that year at Chester, and very, very interesting, introduction. But I found the work challenging and didn't really know what to expect, because I didn't have a background in none of my relatives were in forestry or fire or anything like that. So I think the closest I came was I used to help my grandpa on a dairy farm back in Michigan. But so anyway, I'll leave it at that and see if there's anything to add after others go.
Makes sense. Thank you, Beth. Tanya, what has changed from your perspective?
So when I started with the Forest Service, actually I shouldn't say right out of high school, while I was in high school. So 1997, I graduated from high school. And that year, I actually started with the Forest Service as a fire lookout tower manager, I guess. And I went I was in New Mexico on the Gila, and I went to orientation and ended up going to work before I even graduated from high school. Went back to walk for graduation, but I'm laughing already as I think about it, because I hated the lookout tower. I was 18 and I couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, much less, man a lookout tower. And I always tell people this story, that it was the first and hopefully the only job with the Forest Service that I completely failed in. I just couldn't sit still, and I constantly asked them if there was something else I could be helping with. I didn't get the perspective of, that obviously it was a very important job, and I had a lot that I was doing, and I just couldn't grasp that at my 18 years old. And so they actually finally decided that I would be a better fit on the trail crew, and I started doing that. And honestly, looking back, I think that they were trying to teach me a lesson that, if I complained about the job of sitting in a tower, they would go put me to doing some hard work on a trail crew. And we were actually building the trail, which is incredibly hard work. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it, and, really got into it. And so it's funny, because as I met some of the other people at the remote workstation where I was at, I found out that, they were doing very similar work as that I was doing, building fire line, building contingency lines, those kinds of things for prescribed burning. And I got pretty excited when I heard about hazard pay and things like that. And so the next year ended up on the Silver City Hot Shots. And, it's funny, because I knew that there had been a time, much before my experience, where I had, been told that it had been very difficult for women to, even be considered for those types of positions. And you would think, and Beth and Allison, I'm really excited that we're having this conversation, because I've been so curious about the progression from the standpoint of, of other women in fire, that that at that time, even in the late 90s, I was still one of very, very few women on the Gila in fire. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I got the sense, at least even early on, when I was a peon in the agency. I mean, I was a GS3 as well when I started, and I still got the sense that they were trying pretty hard to bring women into fire. And I mean, this is something I'm curious about that I don't see has changed a whole lot, is there just aren't a lot of women that I'm seeing that are interested in this kind of work. And maybe that's why, I don't know if definitely don't want to speak for Allison or Beth, but that was one of the things that drew me to the job, is not everybody wants to do this work, and it is challenging, and it's also very fulfilling. And if you're a determined, hardworking person, you can really go far. And I liked that. I liked working hard and, finding my strength that I didn't even know I had, and things like that. So I don't think that has changed. And I honestly don't think that, finding women to do this job or to be interested in this job has changed a whole lot either, by my account. But like I said, I do remember being one of on an entire district that had a fairly sizable fire organization. I was one of two women and the other firefighter that was a woman was also her first year. So they didn't even have any returning women. And so that was in the late 90s. So, that was years after Beth's first experience. And I'm just curious. It doesn't feel like it's changed a whole lot as far as the number of women that we have that are interested, or our ability to really go out and inspire women to do this work.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. What about Allison?
So I just wanted to go back on my current position. I work out of for the regional office actually, and so I'm a contract operations equipment specialist, which I did just take a new position with the Weiser Ranger District on the Payette National Forest as a fire operations specialist. So just one quick go back there, but I will say that being on a hand crew has been the biggest part of my career. 17 years I spent on hand crews. And so this last year was a bit of quite a change for me, working virtually out of my house. I did go on fires, but it was a very different experience than I had previously had, just doing equipment inspections and stuff like that. So anyways, just wanted to clear that up real fast. But I would agree with Tanya as far as the women thing. I feel like maybe we're at a point where we should realize that we maybe should stop trying to get women into fire, because it's not anything about whether you're male, female, what color you are, what race you are, but it's more of if you're a hard worker and you enjoy being outdoors and being kind of in a team environment. I've seen a lot of big, strong men fail, so it has nothing to do with that. I think that obviously, it's not something a lot of females are going to seek out, is being dirty and working hard, So I feel like we're at a point where maybe we should stop focusing on that so much, with some of these things. But I personally feel like it kind of brings us back to a point where we don't want to be, let's just focus on getting good people to work for us. But I would agree. I don't think it's changed much. There's still, the 14 years I spent on the hotshot crew, there was, a couple of years where there was 3 or 4 of us, and then, most of the years it was just me. So, which I kind of prefer actually. So, anyways, I don't think that has changed much, and I don't think it's going to, like Tanya alluded to there. The other thing that I think has changed quite a bit would be just the advances in technology, how much time we spend on the computer. Basically everything we do is ran off the computer. Even my later years as a captain and squad boss, it was, you're a firefighter, but then it's amazing how much time is actually devoted to doing things on the computer as far as administrative stuff. And so I found that kind of interesting. But I think just, our mapping and stuff like that has come a long ways. But as far as the actual workplace setting, it's mostly virtual at this point. So it's kind of weird, unless you're out on the line or something. But and then that's just, it is what it is, So I guess, I don't know that I have a lot more to add on to that, but that's kind of my thoughts on that.
That makes a lot of sense. And I would agree. I started on an engine crew and I was the only woman. And I felt like I just had a team of big brothers who treated me like I was another one of them. So I never really felt singled out as a woman. I always felt supported. And I agree. I've seen the workplace change, but as far as it changing drastically in that regard, it sounds like, most of us haven't experienced a very drastic change in that regard. So,
Yeah, I would just add, Jessica, if I could, I actually am old enough to remember when we first, I was still in Northern California when we first got computers came on scene. And I just remember some of these folks, or actually, no, I think I was in Idaho. It was just right when I got to Loman, probably early 80s. And boy, there was folks in the service that just didn't had, and they never were. I mean, they were already close to retirement, and there was just no point. And so I remember a lot of us that were younger, and Allison can tell you, I'm no technology whiz, that's for sure. But she has to help me with my cell phone every now and then. But I mean, it was really hard on some of those people when they set this. And it was back when we had the DG, with the green printing. I don't know if any of you guys even were around by then, but they were this little monitor, and it kind of bounced when you looked at it. And the first iterations of our computers were fascinating, but those of us that were younger had to kind of dig in and figure out how to use that. And of course, having gone to college there. In the late 70s, they were just starting to, get computers, whatever. So it was a huge, Allison just reminded me when she said technology, it was a huge change for the agency, all agencies, I'm sure, just adopting to that or adapting to that and trying to find your bearings in that realm. And as I said, a lot of people just didn't, and that was fine, but, anyway, so now I think about going out on the fires and some of the technology that we have now, and it's improving, by the month, as far as the satellite imagery and all of that kind of stuff. So as opposed to having an old tattered topographic map. And that was your best tool out there when we were trying to find our way on a fire. So, yeah, technology's definitely been a big change.
Yeah. You reminded me, Beth, that do you remember the long lines at fire camp to call home or call anywhere? I was just thinking about that. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, none of us had cell phones. I don't remember. I didn't have a cell phone any of the time I was on a crew, and nobody did. So yeah, I just remember these big phone banks where everybody would stand in line, almost like you were in prison or something, waiting for a phone to call home.
I don't know, Allison. When you first started, did they have those just one phone in the fire camp still?
Yeah, because I think that not everybody had phones at that point, and plus, like, when you're out, especially on the Boise National Forest, there's not a lot of cell service anywhere anyways. So, I do remember the phone lines in like Bear Valley and stuff like that, or Landmark, we'd be up there. And I do remember that you getting on the DGs, Mom. We would stop in there, and yeah, they were pretty archaic, to say the least.
yeah, I think I had a pager, and we thought that was pretty high tech.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, actually, when I first got on the hotshot crew, that's actually what they would give, like if people were going to go out on days off to go do something, they would give them a pager. We just had pagers that they handed out, and I don't think that anybody even knew how to use them, really. So
yeah, same. And just really, it's interesting because of the it seems anyway, hyper focus on technology now. I mean, they want us to use things like FirstNet and to develop firefighter tracking, and which is all well and good and all oriented, but I think a lot of people don't realize, as Allison mentioned, there's not internet access or service in a lot of these areas where you're managing these large incidents. So something for people to keep in mind.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, along those lines, I think we've definitely seen, and I'd be really curious, Allison, your take on this in your more recent years on crews, but we've definitely seen struggles or had struggles with some of our younger firefighters who don't have any of that like woods knowledge. You know, most of us that grew up before you just used your phone to find your way back to your vehicle every time you went out for a hike or or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, we at least had basic woods knowledge. Not that I wouldn't still get lost in the woods from time to time, but we, you know, you knew if you went downhill long enough, you'd run into something and, you know, find your way back and that kind of thing. But we notice now, like, I think one of the funniest things I saw, and this was a handful of years ago, but I saw a crew boss ask a member of his crew, you know, so what is this weather telling us? And he said, hang on. And he pulled out his phone to look up the weather.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a struggle. That's what when I was talking earlier about the women thing, like, I mean, it's sometimes just mind boggling. Like, sometimes I just don't know where these people get the idea that they want to come into the woods, because it doesn't seem like a place that they really belong. So yeah, I would just go back to saying that firefighting is not for everybody. But yeah, it's quite amazing, the lack of, like you say, woods knowledge, or just common knowledge doesn't seem very common these days. You know, I think like we were talking, just everything is digital and like on your phone, and it's just you don't really have to think too much anymore. It's just there. And even you know, the remoteness of where we work a lot, there's still, sometimes I'm amazed at the places you can get cell service and stuff, and people be on their Instagram or whatever, you know, when we sit down to take a break, you know, they're, you know, so yeah, it's definitely that part of things has definitely changed quite a bit. So yeah, I would agree. It's a bit of a struggle. You almost basically have to start fresh with people, you know, with everybody when you get them on the crew and stuff, and just basic knowledge, like even just pooping in the woods, like this is, you know, yeah.
And I've heard this. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's amazing. Yeah, it's just mind-boggling.
And I've heard this talked about a lot in the recruitment arena, and how a lot of the federal agencies are, I don't know if struggle is the word, but dealing with some recruitment issues. And a lot of the theories is that we're now trying to recruit from a generation that isn't used to being outside, you know, being away from home and sleeping on the ground and being dirty and not having to shower for days at a time is not appealing to a lot of people in the younger generations these days. And it's understandable. Right. I mean, they've just grown up with different technology, but it's a challenge.
I think that's true. And, you know, I would just add one other thing too, that, you know, as an IC and an ops person on teams, as cell phones became more prevalent, and I think most crew bosses, you know, make their crew members leave them in their packs or whatever, leave them in the rigs, because of course, you know, then they become lost or damaged, and then, you know, people want to put a claim in. But another thing that we found to be troubling at times was people recording different, you know, like an accident scene even, you know, and people taking pictures and things like that, and then they put it out, or, you know, the typical axe throwing contest, you know, that they have out in the woods, and then people putting that on YouTube or something. And so that's a whole new realm of, you know, oversight and management of people that we didn't have back in the 1970s, for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Beth. I'm very glad social media wasn't around during my first years on fire crews.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot has changed when you look at technology, and now we have things like unmanned aircraft systems, and there's also this hyper focus on detecting wildfires. And while that's all well and good, it seems like it is a hyper focus in the sense that the problem isn't really the technology of detecting fires, it's the availability of highly requested resources like aircraft and hotshot crews, and getting those resources to these fires quickly versus actually detecting the fires in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else though to add, ladies, on that topic?
You know, I feel like I would be amiss not to say something about, like, I was thinking about this question as we were, getting ready for this call today. And I think sometimes, and Allison touched on this, like, I think sometimes in our quest to do a good job with diversity hiring and being in an inclusive workplace and things like that, which are all great intentions and I fully support. But sometimes I think we miss that, I think the thing that Beth and Allison and I and you, Jessica, all probably experienced, and I don't even know all of you that well, but is that, we enjoyed a challenge and we really enjoyed doing something different that most women probably don't enjoy doing. And that's okay. I guess that's the, that's the thing out there, is like trying to fit everyone into a mold of, like, we just have to make this environment such that more people would be, whether they're an ethnicity that doesn't typically like to do this type of work, or whether it's female that doesn't typically like to do this work. When we try so hard to change our workplace to fit somebody, when that workplace really can't be changed all that much. I mean, it's a dangerous, dirty, long hours, kind of place, but we all loved it, right? Because it was, it brought camaraderie, and you found strength within yourself, and you worked hard and you felt accomplished at the end of the day, and all those types of things. Like, those are all great things. And, I feel like absolutely without my start in fire, I wouldn't have learned half as many things about myself, about what I could handle and what I could, push through and all of that. And yeah, I hate to see in the mix of trying to do better in diversity and all of that we miss that all of those are good things too.
Yep. That's a very good point. It's not about forcing a certain demographic of people into the workforce. It's just about recruiting people who want to do this job and who enjoy being outside. And I'm sure Beth and Allison agree. I mean, we started in wildland fire because we love those things, and that's why a lot of us have stuck with it.
One other thing I would add, to the element that's probably a little, different. Well, I don't know how much different for females, but, the whole deal about, like, through my career, when I decided to have children, have a family, you almost have to. So I was well on my way to working, on my division and then ops chief. And, I finally just had to take a break for a few years, to get, because, to feel good about myself and parenting, in that role. So, and I think that there's some it's more evenly distributed maybe now between men and women, but those were challenging years when your kids are, babies, and you're on a team or something. So I had to get off the teams for a few years, and I think that was the right thing to do. But anyway, just another element of, challenges that you have as you work through your career.
Which is a very good point, Beth. And I hear a lot about how leadership in all the wildland fire agencies are looking at things like this. Like, how can we adjust the workforce to allow women to have fire operations careers and not have to take a ton of time off to have a family, or allow them to have more options as far as, more people on crews. So we can allow women to take more time off, or even, just people in general have more time for people to enjoy their families in the summer, or, even for a father to enjoy his son's birthday in mid-July, when that's really not an option, and it hasn't been in the past anyway.
And it is more of a priority for the younger generation, I think, to do a good job of that. I remember, though, one I guess perk for the Forest Service and for the line officer that we had at Lohman at that point in time, there just was a small baby boom when I had Allison and her brother Casey, and right there in Lohman is a remote station, as just for the audience's understanding. So like Allison said, there was certainly no telephones, and still isn't. Still don't have cell service there. But the point is, a group of us, that were having families, started a daycare. And the Forest Service was, because it was a pretty big compound since it was such a remote station, and that ranger there and the forest supervisors supported that. And as far as I know, I don't know if that daycare is still going up there, but they devoted a double wide trailer to the old double wide trailer on the Forest Service compound, but to be in a daycare. And usually somebody from the community or one of the folks' spouse ran that daycare. And I don't know, Allison can probably remember some of it, but there was over a dozen kids there at times. So yeah, just another thing that changed that I kind of am proud of the Forest Service for embracing. And I know they've done it in a lot of other areas too.
Which is, a concept I still hear about today is how can we better support families in general versus just saying, well, you either have to be single or not want a family to be in this career field.
Yep.
So it's a very good point. Anything else, ladies, on that topic?
Well, I think just to tag on to that a little bit, I guess we're kind of more focusing on, the fire operations side of things, but I mean, there is a lot of different positions or jobs that, people can move around into if just so they can fulfill some of those things. It is a whole team, there's the firefighter side of it and stuff, but the Forest Service and the fire community, I mean, there's all the support services and, the administrative stuff, mapping stuff, there's all sorts of different positions that people can move into if they're needing, time off for pregnancy or whatever it might be, So I feel like, we do put a lot of effort into the, we're more focused on the work-life balance these days, it seems like, which is great. It's super great. And I hope that people, take advantage of that. But I know just from being in that hotshot community so recently, with the changes that they're trying to implement with, more people on crews and giving people time off and here and there, like it kind of takes away from that hotshot crew, honestly, because a hotshot crew is a hotshot crew because it's a hotshot crew, because you have those people that are devoted and that are there, so let's say your captain or your soup takes off for, a week or 2 weeks, your crew is different at that point. Like it's not the same crew. Like it's just a fact of the matter, So I just kind of wanted to shed some light on that too. It's definitely going to change, how crews operate, and I think we've already kind of seen that a little bit in some different regions.
That's a really good point, is how can we find that balance, working to transform the workforce to allow and provide for a lot of these opportunities, but still ensure that we keep that crew camaraderie and that everyone has the same quals and that quals are continuing to evolve. That's something that the federal agencies are really working on right now. I mean, this whole workforce transformation effort, adding more permanent positions, moving away from seasonal positions, knowing that we have a lot of year-round fire activity right now. And thankfully, we're being supported. I mean, we're seeing wildland fire management budgets increase, as they should be, with inflation and additional fire suppression needs. And now we have a lot of risk reduction and fuels management needs throughout the country. Thankfully, we're seeing more support and funding for all of these issues. And the goal is to hopefully continue to transform the workforce and work on these issues so that we're providing meaningful careers for women and men, and people can still have families and have that work-life balance at the same time. Oh, next topic, ladies, if you're ready. Thinking back to your first wildland fire incidents, how would you characterize fire seasons, or fire years, as we're calling them now, the fire behavior and the impacts in those days, and then how is that different than the wildfire incidents and the fire behavior that you're seeing today? Beth, you want to start?
Sure. I've thought about this off and on for a while, because people will ask. I think for sure one of the big things that has impacted, the fire ground out there, as it were, is the amount of people that have moved out into the woods. In a manner of speaking, I mean, just we see lots more development, out in the wildlands. I mean, Allison and I have watched it happen in Garden Valley, and to some extent Loman. Loman's a little different because it's a river corridor, and the canyon's pretty steep, and there's not a lot of flat spots. But wherever there's private land and the ability to develop those, it certainly has expanded vastly across the country, really. And so that adds obviously all kinds of challenges, more urban interface, et cetera. And then, I always steer clear of, depending on what group you're having dialogue with, it's almost like talking about a religion or something if you start talking about climate change, right? So you always have to be careful about that. And I'm not a super big, scientific person, but I definitely think from my experiences in the 1970s, I remember going to fires that were 10 or 20,000 acres that seemed like they were very, very large. And, and when I was in school, I studied about the Peshtigo fires that occurred back in 1871, and my family's from Upper Michigan. So I actually, when my grandfather was alive, I actually tried to ask him about that, because apparently, 1 million acres burned in that episode, and 700 people lost their lives. So, and then the 1910 fires also. So we had some of those big episodes. But when I started fighting fire, even in California, again, we didn't have like the August complex was a year or so ago. That I think it became 1 million acres, or at least 900,000. And, it was several fires, of course, that grew together, I think. But the point is, I do think the landscape, the dynamics of fire have changed, and I'm certainly, again, not able to attest to whether that's truly climate change or what it is. But and I think we try to get back to the practice of logging, and we all know that has its own controversies and challenges, relative to different thoughts of our publics that we serve. So I think, certainly back in the 70s and 80s when we were doing a lot of logging, I do think it helped. Now, it also created some hazards in the process, but we generally cleaned those up, and we would go out and burn the slash. And it just seems like it's just a different world today. And of course, I've been away from the forest level, like Tanya and Allison more recently, and probably yourself, Jessica. Was in the region for quite some time, and now the Washington office. So I don't get to drive around in a truck out in the woods anymore. But I, so that's my thoughts. I do think climate change has some effect, and then urban interface has just become huge. Yeah.
Yes, very good points. And we're seeing, look, even if you just look at Idaho, isn't Idaho one of the fastest growing states in the country right now? The expansion of that WUI area, as we call it, the wildland urban interface, is happening very quickly. And I guess I should also add, not only does that mean that wildland fire management is more complicated, it also means it's more expensive when you have to protect more homes, and you have a much more shifted focus to protecting homes, which of course is 100% important and a priority. But it also means you're diverting resources to protect homes versus attacking the main front of the fire. And again, every incident is different, right? Tanya, what about you? What about your perspective?
Yeah, so, I think I come at this from a little bit different place probably than both Beth and Allison, in just that, it's been many, many years since I've been on a fire crew or with, in fire directly. I've spent a lot more of my career in a line officer role, or even before that as a wildlife biologist for a number of years. And so as I think about it, more from the line officer role, which now I've spent more than half of my career, I think, as a line officer. So I think that the thing that strikes me is the change in what I worry about for my firefighters, and the how most of our fires have some sort of urban interface piece of them. We rarely have a fire anymore where there's not a concern for our folks, getting in the middle of power lines at the very least, much less, structures and traffic and all these other things that I don't remember having as much of that years ago when I was, on a fire crew. I know we had some of it, absolutely, and the big fires in California have kind of, in my experience, always looked that way. But I've noticed that it's rare now that we don't have a lot of concern for those types of things. That merging of the wildland firefighter with the structure firefighter domain, and what that looks like, and what do we do about that? Because it's not like our firefighters are just going to back off and say, no, this is out of our specialty, we're going to just let it go, because we can't do that. And at the same time, we're not trained to be structural firefighters, and our folks aren't trained that way. And so that's been I think a change that I've seen and that concerns me, continually. And then the one that we probably don't like to talk about, and I don't know if this is a change or if it's just a change in my career where now I notice it more, but the political piece is tough. It's tough when you're fighting a fire and you're also dealing with, the very real situation of important people being concerned about specific areas and, high dollar resources at risk, those kinds of things. That's been an interesting thing to try to work through too.
I can imagine, especially being a manager and being responsible for all of these people's lives and well-being. I mean, really, I can imagine that intensity just continuing to grow over, especially even the next few years as the flood of people continue to come into Idaho. Yeah, I can only imagine those challenges that you're going to continue to see, Tanya. What about Miss Allison?
Yeah, so definitely a little bit different of perspective than those gals. Being this, I'm going on my 19th fire season this year, and 17 of those were on hand crews. My first year I started in South Dakota, and it was a super slow year in 2004, and I only did like a half season because I was going to school in August. That didn't work out, by the way. But anyways, it was super slow year. But then I got on Type 2 IA crews, and then for a couple years, and then hotshot crew for 14 years, and so kind of my whole career has just been going around the nation to large fires with extreme fire behavior. So kind of the same. I feel like definitely the urban interface has definitely. More people want to live in the woods, whether they should or not is a question. But I think that is definitely a big factor these days. And then it does seem like, we're having larger fires, acreage wise and stuff, but things in general, not just in fire, but just the world is fairly complicated these days. And so I feel like our organization is a little more complicated than it used to be, and stuff like that, with just a lot of moving parts and pieces. But yeah, fire behavior for me kind of hasn't really changed a whole lot from my perspective on crews, because I've been kind of a national resource for extreme fire behavior, for my whole career. So not a whole lot to add to what those gals had to say.
Boy, all those years spent on hotshot crews, you have seen the worst of it, I can imagine. And who knows what we're going to face. In the future, we constantly hear about lack of precipitation and snowpacks are declining, and we could be in for continued extreme fire activity, at least in the years to come. So that's, I guess, another reason why the wildland fire management agencies have been asking for more wildland fire management funding and to transform the workforce in order to meet all of these year-round needs these days. So good points, ladies. Anything else to add, though, on that topic? I think you covered it very well. So thank you so much, Tanya, Brummett, Beth Lund, and Allison Lund, for sharing your interest and your perspectives, and of course, for your wildland fire service over the years. Anything else to add, though, before we leave?
No, thanks to you, Jessica. I think you did a good job of moderating, and it's good to have a chat. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating. I know you all do have busy schedules too, so really appreciate your time and your perspectives. And thank you, viewers, for joining us for this forum short. We will be bringing more of these to you in the future. If you have an idea for a virtual forum short, we would love to hear it. Just email ief@idahoenvironmentalforum.org. If you would like to be added to the member list, or if you would like to help by becoming a sponsor, please visit idahoenvironmentalforum.org, all one word. And thank you again to our current sponsors. Of course, IEF could not do any of this without you. Join IEF for the next forum, and until then, stay safe and healthy. Thank you.